Hello all, this video is about the short runs Phillips curve. The first thing that you need to understand is the relationship between wages and inflation. There's a strong link between wages and inflation. If wages are really high, then price levels will also be high because the firm will want to set a high price in order to cover their costs. Wages are one of the main costs for a business. So if they have to pay more for wages, then economic theory suggests that they would increase their selling price in order to cover those costs. If wages are low, then the firm will set a lower selling price because their total costs are low. So there's no need to charge as much for the product if they don't need to cover as many costs when it comes to wages. Okay, so if we move down, so if we just move back up, we can see we've labelled this axis here, wages and real GDP. Now, if wages are really high, as we said, if wages are high at this point here, then the firm will want to charge a selling price higher than the wages to ensure they cover the cost of the wages and that they also make a profit as well. So this curve, this axis here, that we've labelled wages, we can actually change that to inflation, which we call price levels. So that's why this axis here in the ADAS diagram is labelled price levels. But remember the strong link between price levels, inflation and wages. Okay, let's have a look at the relationship between inflation and unemployment. Now this is for demand pull inflation, So if we just have a look at a ADAS diagram which shows demand pull inflation, so AD short run aggregate supply, P1Y1, if there's an increase in aggregate demand, so that can be an increase in consumption, an increase in investment, an increase in government spending, or an increase in exports from overseas, or a decrease in imports, then aggregate demand will increase from AD1 to AD2. Now look what happens as a result. There is inflation, so inflation increases and unemployment decreases, more people are employed. And this makes sense, doesn't it? Because firms are going to be producing more. Here, Y1 to Y2, there's economic growth. GDP has increased. Therefore, they need more people to produce those products. So employment increases also from Y1 to Y2. And unemployment decreases. So this means that people have more money and they're going to demand more products because they've got more disposable income. And then the demand for firms' products will increase. Firms will exploit this by increasing their selling price, and hence we get inflation. On a similar note, if price levels were to go down, then look what happens to employment, that also goes down. If we put in a decrease in aggregate demand, so a decrease in aggregate demand, you can see that less people are working, employment has increased, unemployment has increased, but these people have less disposable income, they're not going to demand as many products, so firms will decrease their selling price. So just to recap, when it comes to demand pull inflation, as unemployment decreases, inflation increases, and as unemployment increases, inflation decreases. Now let's have a little look at this. Let's do a little link to explain why. So here, unemployment decreases, households, consumers have more disposable income, demand for products increases. Think about YED here, think about income elasticity of demand. As income increases, demand for normal goods increases. However, a nice little evaluation point you can put in here is if people earn more money, the demand would not increase for inferior goods. inferior goods such as basic foodstuffs. So people are buying basic rice, but then they get paid more money, then they're going to buy a more luxurious brand of rice instead. So the demand for the inferior good will actually decrease. Okay, so demand for normal goods increases. Firms will exploit this. They will take advantage of the increase in demand by increasing the selling price, and this will lead to the price levels increasing, hence inflation. Now, what I'd like you to do is this student activity. I would like you to create a flow diagram linking an increase in unemployment to a decrease in inflation with regards to demand pull inflation. Okay, and let's have a look at the Phillips curve now then. So this Phillips curve is going to be for demand pull inflation. So on the left hand side we draw our ADAS diagram. So AD, short run aggregate supply, P1Y1, let's label all of these 1. Now if we take this across to our short run Phillips curve diagram, we could say this is at our 2% target rate of inflation in the UK. The short run Phillips curve, you draw like this. You need to draw it going off the axis slightly. Just draw it going off the axes here, and label that short run Phillips curve. Now if we take this across and go down, then we could say, for argument's sake, that's 4% natural rate of unemployment. Now what happens if aggregate demand, remember we're looking at demand pull inflation here, so if demand was to increase to AD2, P2, Y2, so more people are working, unemployment has fallen, more people have disposable income, so price levels have increased. So if we go up, that will be 3% inflation, and then the natural rate of unemployment will go down to 3%. So here, less people are unemployed, more people are working, more people have disposable income, they're demanding products. Firms exploit this by increasing inflation from 2 to 3%. What happens if aggregate demand falls? AD3, P3, Y3. Let's take that to the short run Phillips curve, 1% and 5% natural rate of unemployment. So here unemployment has increased from 4% to 5%, therefore less people have disposable income, less people will be demanding products, demand for products will fall, firms will have to respond according to economic theory by decreasing their selling price, so the average price for goods and services will decrease from 2% to 1%. Now in the next video we're going to look at the short run Phillips curve, but we're going to take into consideration cost push inflation instead.